School.
All right,
God.
we're live. All right, so I'm gonna do the countdown and then point to you, Garrett.
What's up,
Unique New
YouTube?
York. Unique
All right,
New York.
Oh, I know.
Who's
what
a
you're doing.
unique New
Three.
York?
3, 2, 1, go.
About me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
We are live, YouTube.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Bonafide Talk. We have a very, very special episode for you tonight. Reed.
Woo!
There it is. He was jumping up and down as we're waiting through the intro. He just needed to exert his energy, but we are so excited for Reed Bowman to be on with us tonight. As always, I'm joined by Cameron Campbell. We got Blake Manzer.
Yes, sir.
We got Brian Edwards. And, of course, our co-host for the evening, we have Reed Bowman.
Woo! Let's go.
Yes.
All right,
Welcome, Reed.
fellas.
Good to have
All
you.
right, fellas. Let's start with introducing Reed. Reed is a good friend of ours. We're very thankful to have him here tonight. He's going to have some great insight for us tonight. High energy guy, as you guys can tell. He's got a lot going on. Has a different mindset. So we're excited to bring him on and see what he has to say. Tonight's episode, we're going to talk about censorship. We'll get more into that later. But Reed, why don't you just kind of introduce yourself to those who do not have the pleasure of knowing you and tell them what you got going on.
Hey, y'all. So my name is Reed Bowman. I'm a good friend of all these boys, men, I should say. And let me just start by saying that what an opportunity to come out here to be with a group of men and discuss, whatever it is we're about to discuss, censorship. But I just want to praise y'all for, creating this community or this platform network to where we can talk about what we want to talk about. I'm very grateful and I'm very excited. The truth is,
We're excited.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Y'all's last podcast, episode 13 about masculinity. I listened to it. It was so great. And I literally found myself, I was talking in between and I wish I was there because I feel like I had so much to talk about in that one, but I'm here now and I'm grateful. But yeah, I don't even know. I guess I can give a little bit more intro of myself. So I guess we'll just start with the hard truth is that I'm 22 years old and I went to University of Alabama for 3.5 years. I dropped out. I now work 2 jobs, trying to make money, trying to get to financial freedom, and I'm on my grind. I'm on my path, trying to get a healthy mind and a healthy body. And I want to, put that message in to everyone else that, you can be financially free. You can have a good body. You can have great exercise. You can have good relationships. And, this platform, y'all's platform is a great start for me. And I love to be here. I'm so excited to be here. But yeah, let's get it. I don't know what else to say about that.
Let's get
I'm
it.
excited to have you, Reed.
No, that's
What an
perfect.
intro.
That's exactly what we were looking for, Reed, and appreciate you being here tonight, taking some time. And shout out to the listeners who are joining us tonight. Like Reed mentioned, this is a platform of free discussion. This is a platform of men talking together to work through it. We live in a crazy world. We all know that. We don't need to describe it. And we are just a bunch of men who are just going to come to you. We're going to give you a message. We're going to give you our perspective and hope that you do the best with it. So let's go ahead and get started. Brian, hold it up. What kind of Athens local beer do you have on tap tonight?
Oh, you're skipping me. No. We're introducing a new segment.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just go ahead and go to Brian with the new segment.
Yeah. Perfect lead in, right? So, for those that are listening that can't see the YouTube, I have quite a vinyl collection. However, my vinyl player is currently broken, so I don't really have a use for them besides, sitting around collecting dust. So we're going to add in a new brief little intro where it's titled Bread's Vinyl of the Week. So this week we've got Guardians of the Galaxy, the deluxe vinyl edition. For those of you who've seen the movie, they have a great soundtrack. So yeah, kicking off this new little intro series.
Come and get your love.
Dope looking.
Yeah.
Dude,
Hey, which is that Awesome Mix Volume 1 or 2?
I think it
Or
has
is it both? Both?
Yeah.
Nope, no, never mind. It's only Awesome Mix 1, and then
Ooh,
yeah. So I guess
Awesome
I gotta go
Mix
get
1
the
is
other
good.
one.
Sweet, love it.
But back to our regularly scheduled program that y'all are familiar with. Tonight I am drinking the Athena Creature Comforts, dug this up in the back of the fridge. Yeah, it's all right.
Nice.
It kind of tastes like sour. I don't know if it is a sour. It's just Berliner Weiss. Maybe that is a type of sour. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm ignorant when it comes to the different
I
beers.
learned that the hard way. Berliner Weiss is definitely a sour. I'm not a sour fan.
Me either.
I don't hate on anyone who
No.
likes them, but I bought a 6-pack from Kroger and got home and was just sadly disappointed. So I learned that lesson the hard way. I'll never make that mistake again. Blake, what you got?
All right, so it's been a little while, but I'm sporting the old Trump koozie again.
Good timing.
Old Trump. And inside said Trump koozie, I got personally my favorite beer. I think I've mentioned this a few times, but it's the Sierra Nevada Hazy IPA, hazy little thing IPA.
Ooh, yep.
I think I've had this on the podcast a few
Yep.
times now.
IPAs are trash.
You're trash.
Ooh.
Fucking
Oh,
Alabama
don't say
fan.
that.
I agree.
First
I'm
hot
not an
take of the
Alabama fan.
evening.
Not a fan.
I'm not.
No.
Oh my god.
Right on, Reed. Go ahead and make your introduction. What you got? No, you better get on a knee.
no.
Oh, did you just? Oh no!
Reed
What a
Bowman
way to! Oh Jesus
right
Christ! That
now
was fast.
is
Okay.
for those of you
That was
who
pretty fast.
Reed, tell people what you just did.
I'm pretty certain everyone that's going to see this is understanding that was just an ice. And I just iced myself. I looked at my cooler. Truth is, I don't really ever drink, but I appreciate good stuff. But I also appreciate really trash stuff. I was actually gonna get a Four Loko for tonight just to flex on everyone. Four
Just to
Loko,
flex on it.
Just
Oh my God.
it's the nectar. It's the nectar of the gods, Four Loko. But I just looked in the fridge. There was some Smirnoff Ice and a Mike's Hard lemonade at Blake Mike's Hard. You remember
Oh my
that?
God.
But
Wait, you gotta tell that story.
Oh my God, I have two stories of Reed that just popped into mind. All right, so going
These
off
are
the Mike's
hilarious.
Hard story, I think like when I first started hanging out with Ryan back when I was in 8th grade, meaning Reed was in 7th grade, I was walking by his room and Reed had like a 6-pack of Mike's Hards and he was just chilling in his room playing Xbox at like 13 years old. And I'm like, Reed, what are you drinking? He's like, oh, these are Mike's Hards. I'm like, those have alcohol in them, right? He's like, yeah, but I don't think it's that much. And he's like 6 deep. He's like, yeah, sometimes my parents just let me get these.
Wow.
I'm like,
Jesus.
okay.
well, okay,
That
that's a little over exaggerating. They were sitting there like I was just like, oh, like these are chill. Like I had a couple. I was like, I didn't really feel them. Like it was lit. It tastes good. I'm a crackhead for sugar, so like these things are sugary. And I was
Hell
like, fuck
yeah.
yeah, hell
I
yeah.
bet.
And then on the Four Loko story, Reed,
Yeah.
I will never forget the last time I was down in Alabama. I had like just showed up with Connor. We get up to your room, like everyone's greeting everyone, and you're like, you're like, all right, let's go shotgun a Four Loko. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. And you and I think it was Micah Page
Connor.
got to the.
Micah, no, Connor.
No, it was Jake Day.
Wow.
You and Jake Day go and shotgun the Four Loko. You shotgun it like you always do, but as soon as you remove the can from your mouth,
no.
you just like
No.
spew out over the
Oh
balcony.
no.
I'll never. That image will
Jeez.
never.
I
leave my
mean, like
mind.
this.
Oh no.
Oh,
He's got
That's a 5-second shotgun, boys. It's
Good
disgusting.
Lord.
Ew.
Jesus. That's
Nah,
insane, Reed.
I don't know if I would
That's
have
not
something.
healthy.
Oh yeah, I don't do that anymore. We're talking about health. I don't do that anymore. Like I
Yeah.
said, I don't ever really drink, but I know y'all's thing is showing off a drink, even if it's water. But I was like, why not come and
Yeah,
get
see.
ice or whatever the hell.
Lead
Hey,
me in real quick.
well,
I got a nice tall glass of water.
Sweet. All right, fellas, groundbreaking here. For all the time that we've been doing this segment, y'all know me. I'm a pretty easy to pick guy, right? Y'all can probably guess what I'm gonna have. It's gonna be a Miller Lite, okay? So y'all timed me as I raced down to the basement to grab a beer out of the beer fridge, and I reach into the case of the Miller Lite and it's empty. So I'm like, shit.
Ooh.
So y'all can probably relate to this. Have y'all ever bought like a variety pack of beer from a store, and there's always that like one beer that like is just not very good? You know, you basically just leave it to the confines of the fridge, and it never gets drank. Well, here it is, fellas. Abita.
Oh, damn.
I don't know if
Oh,
you guys
wow.
are familiar with Abita brewery in Louisiana. Great brewery. They have awesome stuff. This is amber. You know, I don't know how it's gonna be. We'll see by the end of this episode, but probably cheeks. But hey, my favorite beer is the beer in front of me. So cheers.
That's true.
Shout out Pat
Um,
Berg for giving me a watch. Just saying. Shout out Pat Berg.
Hey, shout out.
Sorry.
All right, guys. So we'll go ahead and get started here. You know, like we've kind of mentioned here a little bit, today we want to talk about something that's very prevalent in the landscape of national media. It's a word that's circulated into our living rooms. It's been enthorted into the election landscape. It's something that it really captures a large audience, and we want to kind of give our perspective on it today, and that's going to be censorship. Okay, so you know, right now there's a lot of issues going on with Twitter. You guys have probably heard about the stuff going on with the Biden family, how there was an article that was suppressed from Twitter and accounts were being blocked. We'll talk more about that later. With a lot of things going on, and with this being a national topic, we want to give our 2 cents today on censorship. So, what the heck is censorship? Let's talk a little bit about that, guys. Blake, Cameron, Brian, Reed, one of y'all, go ahead and just take the forefront and tell us what censorship means to you.
Yeah. So before we can, as always, have a intellectual conversation about something, it's really important to define exactly what it is. And I mean, even through us defining it, it might be, you know, come off as different than somebody else, like one of our listeners would think of it. But so when I think of censorship, the word, if you just break it down, just from like a dictionary perspective, it's censoring something from another person. So, for example, say I was having like a hard day at work or something like that, and you come home and one of your roommates is like, "Hey, how was work today?" And you're like, "It was all right," you know, just kind of going with it. You're actively censoring how your day was, you know, because we're used to doing that. So that is a very basic example of it, and it kind of, as we get deeper in this conversation, we'll extrapolate it a little more. Um, but then there's the other side to where, I mean, some people could say it's often like, you know, one medium censoring what they're showing to a group of people, like we were saying in news. So that's kind of how I'll intro my perspective of it and how I think it is applicable today.
Hey, real quick, guys. I want to hear y'all's perspective. But Brian, did you just define a word using the word?
Exactly.
I mean, did you say the?
Censorship.
Sorry.
Censorship is essentially censoring.
Yeah, no.
That's what he
I mean,
said.
did we even say the real definition? Because I have the real definition here pulled up, and I really want to say it if we haven't.
spit it
Yet.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, go
Give
ahead.
it
Yeah,
to us.
censorship, the suppression or prohibition of any parts of books, films, news, etc., that are considered obscene, politically unacceptable, or a threat to security. And you know, I love diving into that, but let's keep going.
Go ahead.
I just
Take
want
it.
to say that. Well, no, it's just, I mean, the way I think about it, you know, let's go to the First Amendment, free speech. If I'm not correct, if I'm not wrong, you know, free speech. I'm a big advocate for it. Y'all know, I literally, I preach this to everyone that one of the things I'm going to do in this life, among a million other things, is that I'm going to rid the world of censorship. And I don't know, like how you said, you know, there's pros and cons. Maybe I don't know. You know, we all have our own. You know, there's ignorance to a lot of things, but the truth is, I don't know. I think personally that censorship is mostly bad. You know, I'd love to learn what is good about it. Obviously, there is some, but you know, I'd love to rid it of a lot of today's culture. But that's just my firm belief as to start. But I'm in the business of changing my mind and getting to the truth. So let's get to that. How about that?
I like it. Blake, let's talk a little bit. Do you have any more perspective you want to add on what censorship means to you, what it is?
Yeah.
Feel free to
So
take it.
when you originally posed the question, I was wondering where the word came from, And so I did a quick little Google search here, and so it has root in Latin, as most words do. But the thing I'm reading here, so it says from the 1640s, it refers to an official. So the word censor refers to an official empowered to examine books, plays, etc., to see if they're free of anything immoral or heretical. So basically, a censor was someone who would, examine something and see if anything needed to be taken out. Something was in there that didn't fit whatever social construct existed at the time. Here, I'll be right back. I think my Chipotle is here.
Okay, go take care of it. I love it.
What?
Oh
No,
my
we'll
gosh.
Cameron,
I think
take us-
a good point for that would be like a good example for that would be like just radio. You know, we all know radio is censored. Like there's clean versions of songs for the radio.
Don't get me started on that. Do not get me started on clean songs. Jeez.
Yeah. It
Oh,
is
sorry, keep
stupid
going.
because it just doesn't. It's not what the artist intended. You know, but
Preach.
you know, it's part of the art. But anyway, you know, if you're going to censor, you just don't have, you know, kids listen to it if you don't think they should listen to it. So, you know, I mean, I'm all for like, you know, kids should hear stuff later in life. There's no point in like giving them
I
a
actually
bunch of.
disagree.
You disagree?
Yeah, 100% actually, and this actually goes to a Gary V's thing about it.
Sorry.
And he lets his kids curse and all that shit, and you know why wait later when they can know now? You know, like why this is the whole construct with, you know, today's world is that, you know, we shelter people and we make them think, you know, it's okay, you're not an adult yet, you're a kid, you don't need to be shown all the real life. What is real life? You know, bad words, bad things, you know, stuff that's going to hit you in the face when you become independent. And when that happens, you know, you don't know what's going on. And then it hits you and you're being censored. And it's just like, why show you later in life when you can know now and, you know, use it authentically? I use cuss words authentically.
I agree with
And-
that to an extent. And like cuss words, I've always been like, you know, I'm fine with them. And that's cuss words isn't necessarily what I'm talking about. But
yeah,
like,
no, I know
as
what
far
you're
as
saying.
like innocent children, like I agree that people should grow up and learn stuff a lot sooner, like maybe 13, like teenager, 13,
Yeah.
14, start growing up, learning more stuff about the world because you're going to learn about it one way or another, especially with the internet now.
100%.
But like little kids, you know, there's some point of like protecting their innocence and, you know, not letting them be exposed to everything in the world.
Yeah.
You know, okay, that can
Me-
mess them up in some way.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And, you know, I hear you about protecting innocence, but yeah, Blake, you go on that.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for everything, and while
Agree.
curse words in and of themselves aren't bad in the right context, you know, if you're in a professional environment or around your family and you're just blurting out curse words, then that's just not really the right time and place to do it. And younger kids don't understand that, and so if they grow up around that kind of thing, then they're gonna learn to they're not gonna really learn the proper time and place to use those words. I wouldn't say that that's really
Right.
or I wouldn't say that, you know, avoiding using you know, quote unquote bad language around children is necessarily censorship, or teaching them not to use those kinds of words would be censorship. It's more, well, I guess in a way it kind of is, but it's different than I think the context that the theme of this podcast is about, especially in
Right,
like
like
social media
central
censorship.
messages and
Yeah.
ideologies, like certain
Okay.
kids,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
maybe they shouldn't be introduced to some concept at an early age. Maybe it should wait a little longer.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys all offered great perspective. I think at least our audience will have a better idea of maybe what censorship means. Two things real quick. One thing I always think about with censorship, just in my lifetime, I think back on like early childhood, like PG-13 movies, rated R movies. You know, you think about, like y'all mentioned, clean versions of songs. You think of, you know, explicit versions of songs. I remember being like sixth grade and going and buying the dirty version on iTunes and like listen to it and be like, that's what it's supposed to say. You know, like some Black Eyed Peas song
Yeah,
or
for
something,
real.
and it's like dropping a cuss word. I'm like, oh, let's go. But
Let's go.
what I always think about with censorship, though, is almost like a helicopter parent. Okay,
Yeah.
you know, some helicopter parent that is protecting their child from all the ills of the world, which is a totally virtuous thing to do. Protect your children from things that you don't want them to see because you want them to be pure and whatever. Okay,
Yeah.
so we all spend at least a little bit of time in college. What do those kids usually turn out to be? They're the ones blacking out at the frat party and having to get carried home first semester of college, and they're the ones that like can't handle themselves. They usually are not able to, like you talked about, Reed, have some sort of independence. They're very dependent on somebody, you know, a parent. And if there's not a parent there, then they just go wild and are seeking the information that was withheld from them. So there's
Exactly.
definitely
Yeah.
two sides, right? We could argue all day on the pros and cons of parental censorship, but what I want to real quick talk about is we all kind of touched on the role of parents in censorship. Okay, so as future men of our households, starting families and stuff, we will have the option and ability to decide for our own families what we want our kids to see, what we don't want our kids to see, how we want to expose them to the world and the ills of the world. So that's what I want to talk about next. Okay. We all agreed that there was a responsibility of parents in censorship, but where do we stand on some of the largest companies in the world deciding on censorship? Okay. What do we think about Google, Facebook,
Right.
Twitter, deciding what's correct for us to see and to not see? You know, I want to talk a little bit about that and see where y'all's heads are at. And I really want to talk about the current climate regarding the Biden family scandal that's going on and circulating across the news and social media right now. So whoever wants to go ahead and take that,
Yeah,
run with it.
I'll run with it. So going directly off that, how I mean, it's common knowledge in today's society, and age that big tech makes the majority of their money off selling data. What is data? Data is the cookies. You know, when you go online and you say, "Yeah, sure, take my cookies," all that stuff. That's them getting permission, albeit like very quickly and conveniently, for them to take your data, sell it to other, advertisers and whatnot. And that's how you get targeted ads because your cookies and data, they know what your preferences are. They know your click paths. They know where you're going on their sites. Think of the internet like real estate, just virtually and on a
Wow.
screen in front of you.
I don't think I've ever really
That's what
heard
it
it
is.
described it like that,
Interesting.
but that's
That's
perfect.
exactly what it is.
That's
And
great.
Wow.
companies are paying for that real estate to be in front of you and to grab your attention.
Yeah.
Something I heard honestly, I don't know where I heard it. But if you have to ask what the product they're selling is and you don't know, you are the product. So that's how social media
Profound.
makes their money. We're all their product. They make money off of us and where our attention goes and how they can navigate it and monetize it, and then have advertisers who monetize us also by selling their products to us. So all's that to say is censorship from the big, companies. They are directly affecting, like, using the data to know what to put in front of you because they know what you're going to buy and they know what you're not going to
Right.
buy. They know what you're not interested in. And it's kind of scary all the different avenues that can go into. And really, what it makes me think of is in high school, I'm pretty sure all of us had to read it at Creekview, but the dystopian type novel,
hmm
1984, like Big Brother is watching, where, you know, the government or something gets so high and powerful and essentially like controls
Yeah.
the lives around the people around them. They can censor what their lifestyles are, what they're going to wake up and wear and do. I mean, it's an extreme example of censorship, and it's a dystopian novel. So, but I don't know.
Okay.
There's some parallels there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I definitely see the parallels. Blake, go ahead.
So So these big tech companies, what they tend to do, like Google, Facebook, Twitter, they curate speech. They
Mm.
decide what gets put in front of you and what doesn't get put in front of you through an algorithm. And when you give somebody the power to do that, you're assuming that, or they're operating under the assumption that what they decide is the correct way to go. And
Mhm.
Yeah.
who's to say that they are correct and aren't correct? And that's what we're seeing a lot today is, people who stand behind a certain type of censorship tend to operate under the idea that um, they have the right way of thinking. They have the moral way of thinking. And if you don't think along the same lines that they do, then you're a bigot, or then you're a bad person and you should be canceled. We've all heard cancel culture.
Oh, jeez.
And the scary thing, and what gets touted a lot, is the whole idea of being deplatformed. Certain people who have a different line of thinking or say something that doesn't fit in that constructed box that these bigger censors have outlined. Anything that goes against that gets deplatformed a lot of times, and certain people will uh, argue against giving certain people a platform to speak on. And where I think the danger in that lies is, so there. Imagine if everything we learned in history about how bad the Nazis were, all the terrible things that they did, was just not shown to us because the people who develop education and develop curriculum for us didn't want to show it to us because they thought it would be bad for us to hear. That it would hurt our feelings, it would make us feel bad. Well, then if you grew up not knowing, the consequences of someone who rose to power like Hitler did, if you grew up not knowing about how bad the Nazis were, then you wouldn't know what to watch out for if that thing came came and rose again. History repeats itself, and I think the best way for uh, especially negative history to repeat itself is if you forget where that like what led to certain things in history happening. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
Well said. Go ahead, Reed.
I mean, I don't really. I honestly, truthfully, whenever I'm listening around, I could say a million different things. As soon as Brian or Blake says 5 words, I'm like, oh, well then this. But like,
Yeah.
I obviously don't want to interrupt. I love listening and being in tune to what my co-hosts are saying.
Mm.
But I don't know. There's a lot to say about what it means to censor, and like what Blake was saying earlier about how is Google and Facebook and big tech, right for curating speech? Are they the ones? Are they the ones that should allow this speech to happen? And coming from me, because I ran a Shopify store. This is just from a advertising perspective. I ran a Shopify store for a little bit. I ran Facebook ads, and it's crazy what Facebook does and big tech does to advertise all their data, like Brian was saying about cookies, and it's real estate, how much data you can sell and what you're selling and how advertisers use it, and how I used it to target people to buy like a razor. I was selling like a razor or some shit. Anyway, about that, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought a little bit, but I don't know.
Talking about Shopify and the razor.
Yeah, I was an advertiser. I was using it. It's crazy how, damn, I really lost this one.
How personalized your ads were and how like they kind of
Oh yeah, about
knew as
how
much about you.
Google and all them, about how they think it's right. Let's say it's like a free market, right? Everybody puts out content like they want. There's no censorship, but advertisers still need a way to target. And that's why, a lot of real advertising like billboards and physical advertising is dead. Targeting advertising is the wave. But how are you supposed to target if you can't pick what's being advertised? If everyone's free and choose to advertise whatever they want, how do you how do you choose? And so maybe that's why they do it. That's why they have these algorithms to determine, oh, you like fitness, oh, you like this meme page, you like whatever, oh, we're going to advertise this to you. And I wonder if they can still target advertise people and not censor. The stuff that sucks, the the stuff that people doesn't want to see, shitty things, hate speech, I don't know, just terrible shit. It won't get seen because you know why? Nobody wants to see it. It doesn't need to be censored. We're just not going to click on it. And that's really what I was just thinking about. Why censor when let the market or the people decide we're not even going to watch this anyway. We want to be at this.
Exactly.
Yeah, let everyone
yeah.
have a voice and
Yeah.
target to those separate markets.
Yeah, thank you for helping me out there,
Yeah.
Garrett. I was losing my train a little bit, but yeah, that's what I was trying to get
Got you,
to.
bro. Cameron.
I mean, yeah, I agree with that. I think it needs to be left up to the market more. That's the problem when you talk about censorship and even taking away a private company's right to censorship. Is who do you give it to? Do you give it to the government? I don't know. Like Reed was saying,
You saw it.
get rid of censorship. I don't know if you can do that because when it comes down to it, the simplest levels are like literally yourself, your parents, your family, your community.
Thank you.
So like, and the market, market can decide. And so we don't really want to give that power to the government, I don't think. But the big problem with Google and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all these massive companies are the antitrust issues. That's really the big thing is they've become more than just these little private companies with competitors. Like I would love to, I don't like a lot of things Facebook and Twitter and Google and everyone's been doing politically. Like that's another big part of the definition that Reed read off was about political sides, like which side of the aisle you're on. And so there's a lot of attention on big tech censorship from both sides of the aisles, and they both have different reasons for going after them. So one side of the aisle is going after them for you need to censor more because there's disinformation out there on the internet you need to get rid of, and you need to have fact checkers telling the people what's the truth and what's not the truth. And then another side of the aisle is saying, let the people decide, like, you don't need to be involved in this kind of political censoring. And they've all taken the one side of the aisle's route of like, yeah, we're going to censor political stuff. And I don't necessarily like that. But then when you turn around and where do I go to? What other major website does all the things they do that I can go use and tell my friends to go use?
Oh yeah, dude, I love that. I love that because I was thinking about it and I was actually listening. I don't listen to Joe Rogan a good bit, but I've been listening to him with Joe Rogan and David Goggins, and the most previous one with Kanye West. But he was talking about how, all these platforms for social networking and social media, if we think about it, it's just a way for you to go on there and just throw yourself out the world and see what comes back. But, it comes with a price. You're being censored, or how deep can you get your message? And, there's a lot of, like, there's a lot of platforms, and one could argue that Twitter is the most least censored. And I think that's probably correct. I usually just use Instagram and like Snapchat a little bit. I don't really even use Twitter, but if I were to get a message out, and, I know a lot of good people do, a lot of people who want to send a message, they use Twitter because it's the most uncensored.
Yeah.
And, where else are you going to go? How can you get a message so big that won't get taken for granted, or, it's authentic, truly authentic.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit. Okay. So obviously, there's a problem at hand where these big tech conglomerates, specifically those who govern Google, Facebook, and Twitter, there's a huge problem there where they are basically deciding what we see, what's best for us to see, and what we shouldn't see. Okay. And that's kind of what's driving this conversation today. There's no coincidence that we're talking about it today. So, where this gets tricky, and this is kind of what I want to really dive into and touch on today, is the problem with censorship is when the content that is being blocked or pushes and fulfills a specific political agenda. Okay.
Oh God.
So let's put on our little memory caps here, and let's think back to 4 years ago at the last election. Okay. The big controversy, as I absolutely butcher that, in 2016, had to do with the Russian scandal. Okay. The Russians hacked the 2016 scandal and they got Donald Trump elected, right? That was what we were fed for months on end. And you know what? It all basically ended up being fake news, truly. And so we learned a lot about that. We learned a lot during that time, but at the same time, like people's minds were just kind of fixated on what they had heard on TV and in the news. And in the society that we live in today, you are guilty until proven innocent, right? So that plays a huge factor. Okay. Fast forward 2020, where we are right now. Similar situation. We've got foreign entities playing a major part of basically buying political power through the Biden family. We won't dive too deep into the article right now, but that's basically what's being accused. And Twitter now is deciding that this is fake news. They're deciding for all the people on their platform that they should not read, see, hear, or view this in any capacity. And anyone who shares the content gets blocked. So I think, and maybe this is conservative bias, I don't know, but it seems like that the content that's getting blocked fulfills some kind of political agenda here. Can we all agree on that? Or is that misguided?
Yeah. Well, no matter, I mean, that fact aside, the fact that they will actively deem something to be true or false and prevent it from
Ridiculous.
being shared on those notions, that act of censorship, I would say, kind of defeats the whole purpose of what people love about social media, the ability to, have a platform that they can go and say as they please, like that's how it kind of originated. People had a freedom to, exercise that amendment to, free speech.
So true.
And
So true.
when you throw censorship to this degree in the picture, that's not really the case anymore.
Yeah, it's obviously not one of their principles just to have free speech and not try and control political ideas and political stuff. I mean, we've seen it in the last 4 years. I don't know if y'all looked into Project Veritas, this guy that does like these undercover hidden videos of like YouTube or Google execs like sitting down talking like, yes, we do these things to throttle, shadow ban, and whatever, anything that has to do with like Trump or or political movements that support Trump. Because we don't want him elected. Like there are videos of executives in Google, YouTube, and these big companies saying these things. So it's obvious and it's clear at this point. But I don't know, do you take the right away from these companies to censor? Because I think companies should have the right to censor certain things on their platform.
Yeah, like hate speech or something, like
or like whatever they want.
Be ignorant, shouldn't
Yeah.
be.
Okay, but where's that line?
Yeah.
If there's hate speech, and then what becomes, if you go to the definition of censorship, politically unacceptable. So where's the line? Okay, you can't say I hate this race or I hate these people or these people should die or whatever. Some hates whatever. That's crap. Where's the line? That's my question. Where's the line between going too far
and importantly, who decides what the line is? I think that's kind of
Exactly.
what bothers me is like, so I'm gonna leave my moral, virtuous fortitude and forbearance in the hands of Twitter executives. Like, I don't trust Jack Dorsey for protecting my eyeballs from all the innocent things that I don't need, from protecting my innocence from all the things I don't need to see. Like, I agree. I think that's my problem too, is like, who decides what I see and what I don't.
Right? And there's like,
you
not necessarily an algorithm.
I agree.
You decide to get on Twitter and say, all right, Jack Dorsey, show me what you want me to see.
That's terms and conditions.
So
you apply, you get on that platform, you agree to it.
Well, so that's assuming that he's even the one who's curating that speech. Jack Dorsey, he might not have any idea. It could be down at some lower level with the people who some like lower level employees that are deciding to suspend people for saying a certain thing. Like if someone reads learn to code, some random company member may have the power to just suspend that person's account based on their own bias and their own ideology. Jack Dorsey may not have any. He may not care what people say and don't say. Now it's up to him to give people that power or not. But I think the the main way to fix this, or at least a step in the right direction, would be to examine how much power you give each individual member in that company when deciding what sort of speech can be allowed on that platform and what not.
Yeah, so I will say this too. There's two sides of the coin I'm about to say. Um, so working in technology, specifically in Salesforce, there is a you can Google it. You can go up and look Salesforce list of words that are banned. And you can imagine all the sorts of things. There's pages on pages of words. Like there's got to be thousands of words banned from being entered into Salesforce. So there's one side where there's an algorithm that's searching through all the databases, looking at those words and eliminating them from Salesforce. But then also two, and I can't say the same for every single form of media or technology, but then also say there isn't, and there is some employee, that's gauging those. Like you can't automate everything to where you can't actively gauge like syntax in like a full sentence and paragraph of what somebody's trying to convey, and like that part can't be automated, but a lot of parts of it are. um
Oh, I completely understand what you're trying to say, and this is, I struggled. I had a
Yeah.
big confliction with trying to, there's two things. It's, face-to-face communication and any other form of communication, texting, phone calls, social media, any of that stuff. And, how does this algorithm determine, what the context of this
Intent.
message mean? It's so hard without body language, without tonality, without your voice. It's so hard to convey a true message. So how do you know what the message is? Robots aren't humans, but
Yeah,
they're to
like
some extent, whatever. I don't know.
so
Yeah.
whenever any of us are hanging around each other, we if some outside listener didn't know us at
I already
all,
know.
listen into our conversation, they would think that we hate each other.
no
They would think that we are
context.
the
Yeah.
worst people of all
Yes.
time.
Yes.
Some of the
Yes.
things that we
Good
say
thing
to
we're
each
on
other.
Xbox,
Yeah,
not on
exactly.
PlayStation, listening to our parties.
True.
But yeah, all of us know, when I know Cameron and I call each other dumbass idiot retards all the time.
Yeah.
And
And that would get removed from Twitter if I put it on there.
him and I
Oh my
both
God.
know that neither of us is a dumbass or an idiot or a retard, but we just say it because it's funny. It's a funny thing to say.
Mhm.
You're talking shit. But when you like, all of that message is lost when it's just like appearing as text on a screen. There's no
Yeah.
context to it. There's no emotion. Like Reed was saying, there's no body language. So like you can just be talking shit on a platform like that, just joking around. But someone who doesn't know who you are and can't read the tone of that text is just going to view it as hate speech. That could be how that's defined as
And let me
degrading
just
someone.
jump in on that too, because I'm a big thing about, I have never wanted to censor myself, and that's why I say certain things. But regardless, when I speak or what I'm doing, shoot, I didn't mean to do that.
It's all about intent.
Or
Yes,
yeah, sorry.
exactly.
Yeah. So what I'm getting at is, so let's say me and Blake are having a conversation face to face, whatever, right? And let's say an outside listener comes through. First of all, I don't know you. You're not part of this conversation. What are you doing? You come in and you're like, hey, what are you guys talking about? That's wrong. I'll be like, first of
Mm.
all, who are you? Second of all, this is none of your business. Absolutely
Mm.
zero. Don't even bother. And so, a lot of people are entitled to jump in on something they have no business being in.
Mm.
And that's where I say a lot about that. Just, it's not your business. There's so much, 90% of the world that you see is not your problem.
True.
Worry about yourself in a lot of ways, but try to
Okay.
be empathetic to others.
That is a perfect segue into what I want to get into next. Okay. So, like we all talked about, there is a parental role in censorship. You can control what your kids listen to, see, all that kind of stuff. But there's also an individual responsibility aspect of censorship, right? Okay, I get on Twitter. If I don't want to see the dark depths of the web, I will not scroll through the comments on every one of Donald Trump's tweets. Okay, I don't have to make that decision. I don't have to see it. I know where it's at and I won't look at it, right? So my biggest problem here, and I want to get y'all's take on this, and then we'll move on into the segue that I think Reed really led us into, is I think our country right now is dealing with a very strong elitist takeover. Okay. I know that might sound very strong willed. Let me talk about what elitism is first. Elitism is basically a group of powerful people or companies, or however you want to look at it, deciding what is best for the common man, basically. And the elitism here comes in with the decision makers from these large companies that have so much outreach. If you talk about some of the most powerful and wealthy companies of all time, you cannot talk about any companies that don't include the big five right now. Amazon, Facebook, down the line. Okay. So these decisions, the difference is when you have two major ideologues in the United States of America, two major sides of the aisle that people lean on. You're either left, right, conservative, liberal, etc. And then you have these elitist companies, powerful people deciding, you know, I'm going to fulfill my agenda, what I think is right, by limiting you from seeing this other side of the aisle, this other perspective, this thing that this person believes. I don't think that someone should believe, as my dog is growling right now.
Ozzy.
So anyway, I just wanted to get that across. Do y'all have anything y'all want to add on to that really quickly?
Yeah. Part of like that one side or the other is what the media has done. So like you say all these people, all the elitism, so all the big media groups, and I mean essentially all big corporations too. I saw this prank today. This guy was going around telling people at some kind of rally or protest that like Monsanto, Pfizer, and all these different huge corporations, like big pharmaceutical companies, like are against Trump. And they're like, oh, that's a great thing. I would support those companies, like if they were against Trump. And they just don't even realize like that these corporations are the ones like really doing the harm, and like the really large ones. But and all these media companies are against Trump. So Facebook, Google, Twitter, all the large media, CNN, NBC, which are really controlled by only a couple small or a couple very large media conglomerates, are all against Trump. It's like that's that one thing that's just like, oh, they're all against him. Like I'm not with them. So it kind of shows their hand in some way, you know, like if you're really paying attention.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that we all collectively agree is important is just kind of taking individual responsibility for, you know, your life in general. But specifically in this case, censoring your own life and taking control of your family, deciding what you think your family should and should not see. So not leaving that responsibility in the hands of these people that we have just talked a lot about, because they're not truly looking out for you. You're the only person in this world who truly will always look out for you. So that's a common theme that we're always going to preach during this is individual responsibility, the importance of it. Take control of your life. Do not leave your life to be controlled by the Google executive or whoever's designing the platform at designing the algorithms at Twitter, all that kind of stuff. We'll close the book on that. Reed, you made a really, really awesome point about how, you know, sometimes when you're talking about something or you're communicating with another person, or you're posting a tweet, or you're just making yourself known on some kind of social network, there's people out there who want to kind of jump in and make it a problem. They want to say, oh, how dare you say that thing? How dare you believe this thing?
How dare you?
And what you said that was profound is, hey, it's really not your problem and it's not your business. So get out of here. Okay. So we talked about big tech's role in censorship. We talked about elitism, government, all that kind of stuff. There's also kind of a societal role in censorship as well. So as we all know, there's a group of people out there who want to denounce anybody who does not agree with whatever it is that they agree with. Antifa. You've got people on both sides of the aisle, by the way. This is not just a left-leaning thing. It's right, left, etc. People who denounce those who do not agree with them and want to take away their platforms and just cancel them, basically. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do to combat that, how we can take responsibility upon ourselves to be more conscious and maybe try to eliminate that from happening in our lives. I don't know. What are y'all's thoughts on societal's movement towards trying to tear down thought?
And yeah, and this is great, Garen. I'm glad you're going on this. And it's what I said, 90% of the world you interact with is mostly not your problem. And that's not to say that you shouldn't be aware or you shouldn't care for other people. It's just that, how can you worry about the state of the world, politics, the news, your community when you're not in check? Do you live a good life? Do you have a healthy diet? Are you physically and mentally strong? How can you live how can you have a say on these types of worldly affairs or communal affairs and, not even be stable? And that's my question. And that goes back to worry about yourself, get yourself mentally, physically right. Then you can go out and change the world, change people's opinions, lead by example, and really just change the hearts and minds of people who don't know, who are just trying to put their opinion out there because they want to, they're entitled. And,
Okay.
Yeah, going off what you just said there, Reed. If you live in the world, if you wake up every day and watch any of the mainstream news outlets, or live on your phone, reading what Apple News gives you, reading what Twitter says, reading anything that's fed to you from any sort of media, you're gonna think the world is on fire. You're gonna think the world is a horrible place.
Yes, exactly.
Put yourself in, like,
is on fire.
say that you're like some alien who only observes the Earth through the media that's fed to the people that live on Earth. You're gonna think that this place is a hellhole, that we're just constantly at
Yeah.
war, that we're fighting. But when you step outside and interact with any person on the street in your neighborhood or in the store, I would bet that 98% of the time that interaction is going to be a decent interaction. You're gonna get along with that person. You're not gonna just start yelling at each other. You're not even really, you're probably not gonna get into things that you agree or disagree on. And even if you got to talking to someone and found that there was some friction in that discussion that you were talking about, you wouldn't just start hashing it out like people do in the comments on Twitter, like Garrett was saying in the in Donald Trump's in the
100%,
comment section of
100%.
Donald Trump's page. This kind of reminds me of, so earlier today I was going on a walk with Bailey around my neighborhood, and we passed this black couple just on the street, and as like two white people encountering two black people, there's obviously, like, if you lived on Twitter, then you would think that we automatically like disagree with each other. But they were like the nicest people of all time. They waved, asked us how we were doing, said it was a great day to be walking out, and things were good. If you interact with people in, like, your normal daily life, it's going to be a better interaction than what you are led to believe by looking at any sort of media.
So
Yeah,
true.
I think
Well said.
what it really comes down to is, shout out to Pods. He's in our chat right now, but he coined a phrase that I love personally, is focus on your reality. So
Yeah.
first and
Yeah.
foremost, focus on what's around you, what you see in the physical day in and day out. And then two, also have responsibility for what you feed your mind with. I'm not advocating for saying, hey, get off all social media, it's all bad. It's a tool. Use it as the tool, understand its purpose in your life and how you can extract value of it, and be cognizant of the things you feed your mind with, the pages you follow, the people that you really dig into their content. I mean, use it as a tool. All
Oh
right.
yeah.
That's what it was, maybe not what it was originally made for, but I think that is a healthy way about using it, and taking the personal responsibility in today's age, because you're not going to get away from it, really. I mean, sure, if you want to go live in the cabin in the woods and do your thing, I mean, that is sustainable and people are doing it, but like, I don't know, I like being part of a community and living in normal life, and
As most humans do,
There's
it's
good communities in the woods.
yeah, sure.
Plenty of
Cameron,
bears.
Cameron, go ahead and give your monologue too if you have anything you want to add to this.
Let's see. I had something to say to what Reed was saying. Remind me what your last point was, Reed.
Don't worry about the outly world when you're not in check. Check yourself
Get yourself
before.
right.
Get yourself
yeah,
right before you can
yeah.
worry about the world.
Yeah, and then
I love
Blake
what
kind of
Brian was
touched on
saying.
a little bit of what I wanted to say too. Yes, yeah. So a lot of people are trying to get themselves in check and play a bigger part in the community.
Okay.
And go out and try and learn what's going on in the world, learn what's going on in the news, and that's what they think. Like they're trying to be virtuous in that way. Like I need to care about the environment more. I need to care about all these activist movements more. Because they're trying to be like a better person.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's plays in what you were saying is maybe they're focusing more on the outside world rather than themselves.
Ooh, yeah.
And trying to virtue signal in these ways instead of just getting themselves right and showing that virtue to the world and the people around them.
Mm-hmm.
But then they go to these media sources and they're all fed these certain information, all these left-leaning, so they say Russia played a part in the election 4 years ago. So I think all major countries try to play a part in our election. Like our election is the most important for other countries.
Yeah.
Like China is buying votes right now in the NBA. Like how is that not China getting involved with our government? They literally all these movements running through the NBA and LeBron can attack like all these conservative ideals, but can't say anything about China. That's because he's owned by China. So they're buying votes. They're pushing these, movements in their organization. It's the same thing. These other countries are going to try and sway the election their way if they can. So it's pretty obvious which way a lot of these foreign entities want the election to go this year, and a lot of major corporations that maybe have home base in the U.S. aren't necessarily owned by people in the U.S.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, Monsanto, Pfizer, they're not all for our country, and they're not America first. And that's another thing. America first, and then I put yourself first. Yourself and your family and your community first, but America first before all these other countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So as far as the societal censorship goes, I think we all kind of brought cool perspective there. I think one huge thing that's important is just get yourself right, which is what Reed kind of talked about there. Like on top of that, have conviction in what you believe. And if you don't, go find whatever it is that you believe. Okay. We all have experiences. We all were taught things. We learn things in school. We learn things from our parents, our families. Take inventory of what you believe and have conviction in that thing. Don't be swayed upon by whatever the popular, the opinion of the popular culture is. Just be convicted in what you believe. Adapt when needed to, when you need to, and don't sway so much like a tree in the wind. That's so important, because when these mobs of people, these mobs of thought come into our lives and they try to sway you in some certain direction towards whatever it is that they believe, then you will know, hey, that's not right. This is what I believe, and here's where I have a problem with what you think, opposed to, oh, I have to believe what you're telling me because you're yelling at me, and I'm not virtuous, and I don't have my experiences don't accredit my beliefs. Oh yeah, I'll just go hop on with you and I'll start screaming at other people. And that's kind of the society that we live in today, is people are so insecure about what they believe, and anyway, Reed, you're jumping up and down, so take it.
That's a great
point.
Just,
and that's just about coming to a conversation. One, if you're coming to it angry like that, but let's just say you're coming to a conversation, you need to not be reactionary. When something happens, you see it and you're like, oh, this makes me really angry, but I'm going to look at this objectively and be like, okay, you know what? Maybe this person's not right. Maybe I shouldn't be listening to this person. Look at it objectively and think, is this the right move? Don't be reactionary. It's have self thought. self-awareness. I'll preach that till I
Oh.
die. Self-awareness is big, but yeah.
I know
Yeah.
y'all are a slut for a good quote there, Blake. Here's
I
one
love
for
how
you.
Aren't
y'all
we
are a
all?
good.
Teddy
Well, I was gonna say him and Lust, but yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt only. Teddy Roosevelt quotes only. And if it's
Yeah.
not from Teddy Roosevelt, just lie to us and say it is.
The
This
big
one is
staff
just, like
quote.
too fitting, you know. Maybe he thought about
Yes,
it
the
at one
big staff.
time. But he who does not believe in anything will, or fuck, God,
You're
y'all
right. You're right.
fucking
Keep
talk
going.
Too much.
Keep going.
No, I know that
No,
one.
Right,
no, I'm
keep going.
mixing up the words now. It's like he who doesn't believe in anything will fall for anything, or in
Fall
something
for
will fall
everything.
for anything.
Who? But
Anything.
I think
He,
it's like fall
he-
for nothing. Believes nothing will fall for everything. Maybe. Like
yes,
that?
that's it. Right.
Is that
Who
it?
does not believe
Yep.
in something will fall for anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
And that's right. And I know I've said this multiple times on the show, but the Bible talks about this. The man who built his house upon stone, conviction and beliefs, conviction and what's right, will not be swayed. His house will stay when the storm comes. But he who builds his house on sand, when the storm comes, he will wash away in the waters of the storm. I mean, that's biblical. I mean, this is as old as time. It's nothing new. So keep that in mind. Just take inventory of what you believe. Get yourself right. Get mentally, physically fit.
Yeah.
Think for yourself.
Yes,
think
sir.
for yourself. Don't be so swayed by whatever it is that these outside sources are telling you. You might not have experience in the workplace, since we're all young professionals right now, but you have experience in life, and do not let other people discredit that. And you are entitled to what it is that you believe, but do not let someone else believe for you. Interesting. Real quick, I'm going to add this in and we'll move on. An interesting analogy I heard today was do not LARP through your own life. I know you nerds know what LARPing is.
Don't LARP through your
Actually,
own
no.
life.
What does it mean for the unenlightened, Garrett?
Yeah, live action role playing. So if you guys have never seen Role Models, that's a perfect depiction of LARPing. But LARPing is basically like the guys who like hang out at the park and like pretend sword fight and stuff and like take on different roles. Anyway, but it was just something funny I heard that applies.
You got experience in that?
So like
I
the
wish.
lightsaber fights we have, that's LARPing?
That's LARPing. Yep. Not pretending to be Obi-Wan Kenobi on the LARPing. Anyway, sorry. That wasn't really that funny, so I'll take an L on that one.
No, but I
But,
had a point to make to what you were saying
yeah.
before. Like the main point you just made is like stand by your principles and stuff. And that's one thing that I have not seen these major corporations do. Twitter, Facebook, Google, they haven't stood by like what they're really saying. And same with like a lot of the media companies where they claim to be like unbiased, like they stand on
Holy
principle,
shit.
but it's pretty clear that they don't. Yeah, exactly.
Fucking joke.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
keep
like
going,
I don't like you anymore. I don't like you as a corporation. I'm gonna still use you. I still read stuff from CNN and Fox News, and I still go. I mean, I hardly go on Twitter anymore, but I still use Instagram and Facebook occasionally. But I just use them. I just use them like trash. Like I don't know, like something you don't care about. Like I don't care
tool.
about
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
But then there's other platforms. I've got into another guy recently. There's only been one other platform. That's what I think there should be more of, is like people with their own platforms. I've only supported one other like outside internet TV source, which is $5 a month. I watch his stuff a bunch of times every month. So $5 is easy, and that helps him so much. And if he has a bunch of people like that, and it's not just one guy, like one show, it's a group of people. Like it's an actual TV programming place on the internet that I subscribe to, that isn't Netflix, that isn't Hulu, that isn't Disney, that isn't on Facebook or Twitter. I mean, he got deplatformed, this guy. So he's off. So like you can't blame it on these big companies when you're consenting everything to these big companies. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, real quick, Cameron, I got your gift idea for your birthday next year. Go check the Google Drive real quick.
I'm overlaying this on the screen right now. This is hilarious.
Overlay it.
Look at that.
So for those of you who cannot see this, it's a so Barstool Sports, you guys, if
Blake's about to
y'all know
I
about them
can't
by
see
now.
it.
There he is. Yeah.
But Barstool Sports, when
Oh,
like all the
yes.
China stuff came out with LeBron James, I guess last year, or this
I
year,
actually
whenever that
want one of
was,
those.
they made a T-shirt and it's LeBron James wearing like a communist hat and like it's in Chinese. It's the funniest thing ever. We got it overlaid on the YouTube, so go check it out. Cameron, that's your birthday gift for
That
next
was
year after that.
Barstool that
LeBron's.
put that out.
Yeah, dude.
That's really
Yeah.
funny.
Somebody made a mural. This artist made a mural of, you know, the joke about G looking like Winnie the Pooh.
Ooh.
So they did a mural of Trump. I think he was like, I mean, not Trump. Why did I just say Trump? LeBron.
G.
Painted like G, and then G painted like Winnie the Pooh next to each other.
Wow.
So
That's funny.
it was hilarious. Look that one up. It'd be funny.
Will do for sure. All right, we got a listener question from the YouTube chat, and I'd like to. I think we kind of talked about it a little bit, but I'd like to kind of formalize it and really discuss it. So, let me do justice to our loyal listener real quick and make sure I have their name right. I don't have their personal name, but I have their YouTube name at least. I'm gonna do them justice. Volswol.
Anthony
shout out.
Vocilla. Hey, yeah, hey, he's I actually met him in Sunday school,
Oh,
probably
nice.
around like 5-6 years ago.
Cool.
I just want to give him a shout out. I'm so glad he's watching right now. He's trying to better
Yeah, man.
himself, trying to get some good content. You know, be a better person.
Good.
Love you
Good.
for
Aren't
watching.
we
Man.
all?
Awesome. Well, thanks, Volswol. Thanks, Anthony. We appreciate you tuning in, brother, and we look forward to hearing more of your questions in the future, man. And thank you for staying involved. So he's got a question. He asks us, if you cannot get rid of censorship, how would we handle who censors? Who would be in charge of censoring? And he's got a couple of examples here, being government agencies, intellectual product courts, councils. Let's talk about that. Brian.
I pondered over this for like 5 to 10 minutes, and like it was hard to like come up with an answer that, I don't know, I think like even directly answered the question. So I was saying maybe like come up with some form, like obviously it would have to be a group of people or something, right? That can maybe, I don't know, create metrics to actually gauge like if censorship is good or bad in a scenario. Like it's so vague and ambiguous to like, it's a hard topic. And I mean, that's why we've been on here talking about it for an hour and a half. You know, it's hard to really put in words and conceptualize. Like, I don't know. Like, it's hard to say, like I said.
You
But
know,
with anything, you just got to define it and
Blake, you
come
go.
up with metrics that are good or bad, I guess, and assess it from there in the situation.
Cool.
Yeah,
That's very techie of you to say.
I think you got to do whatever you can to promote free speech.
Yeah.
If you look back on it, the foundation of this country, or the United States of America, was founded upon pushing back from the quote unquote censors of the British government.
Yeah.
Look back to how Great Britain operated before the United States was formed. Taxation without representation was a big thing that started the foundation of this country. And if you said anything negative about the king, or if you talked bad about the parliament, then you were put in jail, and one of the punishments was death. If you said anything negative about those who ruled over you, you could have been killed for that. And that was enough to start an entire country that we all live in right now.
Yeah.
That's what overbearing censorship can lead to. And so, the very first amendment of the United States, of the U.S. Constitution, was the right to free speech, the right to free assembly, the right to freedom of the press. Basically giving those who lived in this new country, separate from Great Britain, the God-given right to express themselves and their ideals without being put to death or put in jail. So that was 250 years ago, but I think those fundamental rights and those fundamental ideals still exist today. So obviously times have changed. Technology is a lot different. Culture is a lot different than it was back then. But we're still human. We still have those human tendencies, and we're still seeing the negative effects of those in power who want to control and suppress certain types of speech. And the best thing that we can do is uphold that First Amendment in whatever way that we can.
Cool.
Uphold
Yeah,
the right to assembly, free assembly.
Well said. Let's quickly work through this question, Reed and Cameron. What are y'all's thoughts?
Okay, so I've been trying to think about this question, and it's just like the first thought I kind of had was like, okay, well, Brian was saying, what kind of committee do we create? And okay, the first thought was like, you know, let's make a constitution, let's make a referendum, and a group of people will debate this referendum constitution of censorship. And like, well, I'm like, okay, well, why the fuck do we even need that? When we already have, the First Amendment, we have free speech. But I don't know. Do we create a committee and they go through a certain law book, a referendum, be like, okay, this is hate speech, this isn't, we can censor this, we can't censor that, and just, not having bias, taking a group of people, looking at a law, a code to determine what is right, isn't wrong. Or on the other side of it, say, and this is kind of where I'm leaning, but I don't know, this is my opinion. If I can't get rid of censorship, what, or maybe let's say if I can, why bother? It's not my business to, if somebody goes on Twitter right now and says, they at me and say, you should kill yourself, I'll be like, okay, that's irrelevant to me. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, this couldn't be more irrelevant. I wonder, it's not my business. It's just so irrelevant. And that's kind of how that I'm looking on this. It's just, there's so much irrelevancy with what I see, and why bother censoring if it doesn't even matter? But that's what the media does. They try to push a narrative and agenda on you, and so many people will believe it, and they make you form an opinion in a sense of an entitlement. And I don't know, man. I believe the First Amendment, but I don't know how censorship, or if it should even be here.
I think podcasts are a big part of that.
Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
I love that. And actually, I won't stop there and say that you even said the freedom of press. And let's just say that, Twitter, Facebook, social media, whatever, let's say it is the press. Technically, it's just not them. They're the newspaper, but we write it. And, it's so why do they have the ability? Because it's theirs. They are the press, they make it, and we write it. So they guess they can rewrite it. I don't know.
Who's the press? Public,
Twitter.
like
Let's say
newspapers?
No, let's just say Twitter. Like I was looking at like Twitter is the newspaper, but we are putting our words on it, and they're just delivering it every day. We're using their platform to create the message. That's really all I'm saying. But they decide whether or not our message is good enough. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah. So
Sometimes.
no, you're right for the most part. But thing, and we can get into this next section. This kind of leads right into it when you're talking about who has the power to do what, and what laws are already on the books. Then we're talking about Section 230 in the CDA, the Communications Decency Act. So the problem there is Twitter and Facebook aren't publishers or broadcasters. They aren't the New York Times, and they aren't CNN. So they can't be held liable in the same legal sense for what's published on their website. So that's a sense of immunity, a legal immunity that they received back in 1996, that you're not liable for what people put on your thing. But it also doesn't say that they can't still censor or take down certain things that they deem fit. Just like you can kick somebody out of your store, I think if I started a platform, I spent a lot of money on it, bought the server space, I wouldn't want certain things promoted on my platform that I don't agree with. And I feel like I should have the right to say, no, we're not going to have that here. I don't want to spend the money on the server space.
Yeah, I understand.
Think about it this way real quick to that point. Say you start a company, whatever, you get a bunch of employees, and then you go and invest in an office building and you own your own land. What if people want to come and put up signs and shit out there that aren't that don't align with
Exactly.
your values?
Exactly.
It's the
I have the
same thing.
right. I have the right to take that shit down and censor what is in my area. You know,
Yeah.
my platform, my business.
I pay the taxes. I pay the
Okay.
mortgage. I
Well,
own the land.
so
You go, Blake.
I
I'm
don't
ready.
I don't know if it's as clear cut as that. Like obviously Twitter and Facebook are private companies, and there's definitely an argument there that the people who own that company should be able to allow what can and can't be said on that platform. But when you've got billions and billions of people using that platform, then the question becomes like, are you making fun of me, Garrett?
They own and pay for the
Billions,
domain, though.
billions
They
and billions and
own the
billions of
internet real
people.
estate.
Yeah,
He's
it's
talking about
like
Sorry.
in if it these fuck you made me lost my
I'm so
momentum.
sorry, dude.
You're
Damn
good.
it, I'm so sorry.
I mean these
The
platforms
billions and
are
billions.
centers for people to discuss ideas, and when you own a platform that allows that much public discussion, then then it's like, well, should you give that company the right to curate what can and can't be said on that platform? I one popular idea that's kind of been floated around is whether or not these companies, these private companies, should be regulated like a public utility. For example, like Georgia Power they're a private company, but they supply power to the citizens of Georgia in a certain region. And no matter what your political views are, you can still get power to your house because that's your right. That is your right as a human being to, live with lights and be able to cook food. And so another right as a human being is the right to free speech. And so if
Yes.
as I personally, I'm a supporter of the idea that Twitter, Facebook, yada yada should be regulated like a public utility, saying that
Yeah.
you, because this platform has such wide access, you should be able to espouse whatever idea that you want, and send it out there to the masses and let the masses debate on that
Without
idea.
recusal, without
Yeah, without being
recusal.
canceled or without being canceled from the
100%. And I'd love to say one thing about that. It's like, they are private companies, like you say, but they're so big. And like I said, social media is the place where you go to put your message to the world. Where else can you go to get that community, that, amount of people on one message? Be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is the message I'm trying to spread. Where else do you go? You can't. And so you say they're private, make it public to where, I should be able to post and, without recusal, like you said. It's just like, it's that thing. They're private versus public.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are all really good points. So let's talk a little bit about Section 230. Section 230, like we all talked about, it basically protects these platforms from basically being sued by people for hate speech on their platforms. Okay. But let's talk about this. And I was thinking about this before we got started today. So right now there's a big movement to repeal and to pull the rug out on Section 230 in the Communications Decency Act. Okay. Would that create more censorship? Let's think about it. If a company has more liability on their hands of being sued over things being shared on their platform that are either untrue, they're hateful, they incite violence, or anything of the sorts that are not socially acceptable in human-to-human interaction, then wouldn't they be even more intense about censoring their platforms to rid of those things being said? Would that incite more censorship?
Yeah, that makes sense.
No comments. You'd probably have to pay to be able to say something.
Right.
You wouldn't, they wouldn't just have open comments on YouTube videos. You wouldn't be able to respond to people on Twitter. Right. You just couldn't do that stuff because they'd be liable for everything you say.
Yeah. So, instead of, that might end up just creating more problems if we repeal 230. Now, if we're able, you have to also understand this act that has been circulating around the news over the last few days was made in 1996 before Facebook ever existed. So maybe what the need is new legislation, not relying on a 1996 act. See, I'm anti-legislation. God, I'm butchering those tonight. Like when I don't think we need it, I'd rather not have it. I'd rather have less regulation. So I'd rather just leave the responsibility in the hands of the companies. I'd like to tell them no censorship whatsoever, especially when it comes to political sharing of ideas. None whatsoever. They can decide for themselves, morality stuff, etc. My thing is this, going back to Anthony's question earlier about if you can't get rid of censorship, how would you handle it? Personal responsibility. Leave it up to the people. Instead of taking power out of the people's hands, enable them, because that creates a better society. When people are given responsibility, they create things, they build legacies, they build
I love
families.
this.
Dude,
I love what you're saying. I love that.
I would
love
rather not have any legislation whatsoever, and I'd rather just say, hey, you know what, Twitter, it can be a dark place, but you know what, if you stay on the top level and you stay out of the depths of all the trolls, Skank 42 for my South Parkers out there, you stay away from those people, you're gonna be fine. And
Good.
government, don't get
I love it.
involved. Like, tell them that they should not stay in the politics, but just don't get involved otherwise.
Going off of that, you become what you surround yourself with. If you feed yourself with negativity, the dark media, all this shit, you're going to be a dark person. Your life's going to be horrible. It's not going to be good.
Yeah,
and
true.
if you choose to look
You're
at
gonna
that,
have a bad time.
you're going to have a bad time. And then you just have to understand, one, self-awareness. Two, I want to be a positive person. I'm going to stay away from the dark stuff. Oh, I don't want that. Oh, look at this. Great things. I'm surrounding myself with a positive environment. That's all there needs to be said.
True.
But guys, what if I don't want to take responsibility for that and I just want them to?
Well, then you're a
do what I
victim
need
and the
to?
government should subsidize your living.
That's
No.
a much
No.
more societal issue that we'll have to talk about in a future episode, because that's just a huge problem. I mean, it goes back to our masculinity episode last week, and it plays into today. It plays into people just wanting to pass on their responsibility to someone else, to a higher power, government, their parents, their spouse, whatever, and they don't want to take things into their own hands. But in order to reach fulfillment in your own life, you've got to shed some of the burden and contribute in some way. Sack up, nut up. Absolutely. So I think we've kind of rounded the bases here. I think we're kind of about to slide into home, fellas. What are y'all thinking? Any final thoughts on just some sort of call to action as far as, wrapping up what our discussion's been for the last hour plus?
Yeah. Let's kind of end the more like conceptualized, like censorship focused, and then kind of shift the focus back to Reed, because we don't have a guest, on all the time. I think Reed, you're our second one. So let's kind of wrap up. If somebody wanted to take a couple sentences, drive home the point, and let's shift the focus to Reed.
I don't have anything to say.
Well, so I mean, what Garrett was saying about like Section 230, and it's like, and he wants limited regulations. I think Section 230 is a very limited piece of legislation. It actually protects them from a lot of legalities and liability. We have the most attorneys per capita in the world. A lot of people are trying to sue big companies like that. So I think it's important to protect that side of it, to actually enable more free speech, like you were saying. But then also it's important not to protect these big tech companies when they're doing things, somewhere in Section 230, like C part 1 or 2, I forget. But it specifically talks about what I was saying. They do have the right to take stuff down that falls under what is protected by the First Amendment, in good faith that it is an obscenity or something, pornographic or something that shouldn't be on the site, like in good faith. And that's why I actually really like and helped develop the name of our podcast, bona fide, because that's
Mhm.
good faith. That's a very important aspect of the law and of a lot of laws in this country, is that's a legal term, good faith. So in good faith that they wouldn't turn it into like a political device, and that's it, but they have. So
Hmm.
I think there is and should be legal repercussion for them for kind of violating that part of it.
Fair.
Because they are so
solid
good.
points, but I gotta cut you off because we wanted 2 to 3 sentences to sum up the episode, and you just
Jeez.
reached around your
Nah,
back to scratch
was-
your ass right there. So
Nah, that was good. Hey, real quick, do y'all remember what the other name was that we were looking at for the name of the podcast other than Bonafide?
The swag babies.
Ooh.
What?
Bet.
That was never.
It's a
I
damn
was-
bet.
Lord.
No,
I was
it
trying to
It was the
remember. It
one
was-
that we had talked about with Reed. Was it not?
What?
It was the pursuit.
Oh, the
Oh,
pursuit.
yeah.
Yeah, that was okay. That's
Remember?
I loved that one, but like,
It's a pretty solid
yeah.
podcast name.
yeah, we
But
won't we won't
I
dive
think it's
into that. But
used.
All right,
Yeah.
guys. So takeaways from
Oh,
our
God, Brian.
topic.
Jesus
Mr.
Christ,
Prompt.
Brian.
Mr.
Drive
Prompt.
home the point. Let's get going. I want to talk about Reed.
Oh,
all right?
CP Brian. Brian
Well,
So
it's
censorship.
here. I got
look,
it.
stop
I got
censoring
it. I got
everyone,
it.
Brian. Stop
Yeah,
censoring
you
no
everyone.
friggin'
shit.
censor Winnie the
Gosh.
Pooh.
Okay.
You
Delivering and
fascist.
driving home a point.
Okay,
You
all right.
Nazi fascist.
So
You'll-
if you want a takeaway as far as what our thoughts are, rewind this about an hour and you'll get all our takeaways.
Yeah.
You know, we've all been very genuine in our thoughts here. Go back, listen. Censorship, there's pros and cons here. Obviously, it's a really tough decision or really tough issue. So we'll see what happens. We're just going to take it into our own lives and try to make changes where we see fit. And one thing I want to say to our listeners, we have never, I got this question the other day. We have never once edited any of our podcasts. That's bona fide talk right there.
Authenticity.
Trying to be authentic and trying to, go against all the censoring, all that kind of stuff. We've been genuine, upfront with everything. We've never edited anything out. So that's us here taking our stand on censorship and what we think about that. So that's my takeaway. Let's talk about Reed. Again, awesome insight today. Really appreciate you coming on. We do have a
Yes,
couple
sir.
last questions for you. We want to ask. Brian, go ahead and get off the first one because Brian's the bookworm. I know he's dying to ask this question.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So, Reed, favorite book? It says recent. Let's just say do overall and then something you've read the past year.
Okay, so if we're talking about my favorite or something, it's not even like favorite. It's something that's just impacted me the most. And I don't even have a physical copy of it. Let me just pull it up here. It's called Psycho Cybernetics.
Oh, interesting.
You ever heard of that,
Okay.
Garrett?
No.
And so basically it's like, okay. Regardless, it's basically saying it was this plastic surgeon who, he would always try to fix people's faces and reconstructive surgery and all that stuff. And he was really deep into the mind aspect of it, and he would wonder, 50% of the time he would reconstruct people's faces in their body and they'd be okay, and they'd be like, oh my God, I'm so confident now. I'm not ugly, I'm not broken. And then, the other 50%, they would look at them and be like, they would before they were broken or before their surgery, they'd be like, oh, life sucks. I'm ugly. I'm whatever. And even afterwards, when they were fixed, they were like, I still suck. And he dives into, how he dissects that and how you can turn that around. And basically he states that, man is not a machine. Man just uses a mechanism that we call, a goal striving mechanism, which is, the basis around AI. Our goal striving mechanism is either a success or a failure based on what our mind can do. Are you planning for success? Are you creating success? Or are you creating failure? Okay, I'm waking up tomorrow. I'm going to wake up tomorrow. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to go blah, blah, blah. Or, are you waking up, be like, oh, damn, another fucking bullshit day, go to a bullshit job I hate, are you looking at it like, is this failure? you're going to get failure or you're going to get success either way. It's a failure goal striving mechanism, and we use it. Our mind is that, and we use it. And that's great. This book is amazing. Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. If you're trying to lean into the mind, I'm a big mind guy. I love deciphering the mind and seeing what we're capable of. The mind is an untapped resource. It's unlimited. And that just brings me to my next point about being self-aware, but I'll get into that later. Psycho-Cybernetics. The other book that I'm reading is called Unscripted. It's Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Entrepreneurship. Basically talking about how, you know, the media, the government, your friends, your family create a script for your life, you know, the 9 to 5, go to college, get a job, go to debt, die, work, eat, sleep, bullshit, right? And it's just getting you away from the monotonous life and trying to be your own person. If you're trying to break free, if you're trying to find a purpose, a passion, you know, this book's great.
Awesome.
Life, Liberty, the Pursuit of Entrepreneurship.
Awesome.
And that's
dude.
just
those.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add those to my read list. Those sound awesome.
Same.
This one was really good too, Brian. How to not give a fuck. This one's really good. I kind of want to read it again, but the subtle art
like
of not.
3 books now. Yeah.
The subtle art.
Sweet, dude.
Yeah,
that's great too. Favorite recent podcast? Anything recent that, or any channel or just episode? Anything that's been like lighting you up?
The last 2 weeks, I've been consuming a shit, like 2.5 weeks, consuming a shit ton of David Goggins content. If you don't know who David Goggins is, they basically call him the hardest motherfucker on the planet. And that's because he was originally, you know, he got abused. He had a very abusive childhood, you know, all this shit, whatever.
It's messed
Grew up. He gets messed up, struggle, 300 pounds, decides, you know what? You know, fuck this life. I'm going to go be a SEAL. I'm going to go create the best version of myself through suffering. Suffering will lead to long-term happiness. And that's very profound to say, but he just basically, I've been going into his content about, you know, the mind and mental toughness and going through suffering. Suffering creates the ability to enjoy peace. You understand suffering, so you know what peace is. And that's whatever, but
you got to have valleys to enjoy the peaks.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Blake, love that.
I think one thing that scares people away from suffering and why that's such like a negative connotative word is people can't differentiate like long-term versus short-term suffering. If you're not like you said suffering, but I think what you really meant is if you suffer now, if you suffer in the short term, you're going to be happier in the long term.
Yeah.
If you're trying to lose weight, you got to suffer right now. You got to quit eating bad. You got to get out and run or work
100%.
out. And then in
100%.
the long term, you're going to be more content with your body. But that's basically applied to not just being healthy, but just life in general is what Goggins preaches. And I definitely agree with you. I think we're all disciples of his mentality. And we strive to be more like him on this podcast for sure. And we encourage you guys all to go check him out. Awesome, dude.
Yeah, Goggins. Sorry. It was just my podcast. Just Joe Rogan content with a lot of good mindset people.
Toe.
Obviously, Joe
right
Rogan.
on.
Joe the Toe.
But Goggins. Okay, 2 people. This isn't about podcasts. This is people. 2 people. David Goggins, and the other one is Gary Vaynerchuk. I love him because one, he spreads positivity like a motherfucker you never know. He'll shoot kindness into your heart, and like you said, Brian, he's a little over the top, but he'll push that kindness onto you and to other people about being empathetic, about being a good person, about being social, you know, being healthy, just about being a social, communicative human being and getting your message out there. That's why I love him. And then the other part of it, Goggins, about creating a better life. Those 2 people, Gary Vaynerchuk, David Goggins.
Awesome, dude. That's great. So, all right, let's talk. Last thing. Let's talk about your mental toughness battle right now. You know, you're a disciple of the mind. You said the mind's unlimited, which I think a lot of people would argue that, but I think there's truth in that. So let's talk about some things that you've been trying to enact in your own life to be more mentally tough, to be disciplined, and to get yourself going in the right direction.
You know, I love how you phrase that. So basically, you know, if I took this from a life standpoint, you know, technically as a child, I was labeled with ADHD, and, you know, I don't know if that's true. You know, there's a lot of misdiagnoses and all that shit, whatever. I'm a very high energy person. That's a fact. Attention deficit hyper disorder. I was very distracted. attention span was very limited. I couldn't focus very well. And the truth is, I think before I even go into the truth of that, and I tried to medicate. There was medications, pills, whatever. I took, it doesn't matter. I tried to, make me calm, fix me. And, they sucked. They sucked. I took them, 7th, 8th grade, and I was a terrible human being. I didn't speak. I didn't eat. It turned me into a robot. Never trash. Anyway, I realized that, I don't know if I had ADHD or not. Regardless, I'm high energy and I didn't want to change that. I love being who I am, but I figured that the way to fix my attention, my focus, and being right is self-awareness. And I'll say this until I fucking die. It's if you're self-aware of what you're doing, you won't lose focus on what really matters. And I figured that, through a series of actually, I'm a big thinker. I think all the time. I love to, sit and ponder what I'm doing and who I am and what is going on. I do that a lot in the shower. But thinking about meditation, back around a year ago, I was in a tough spot. I lived kind of alone in my an apartment in Tuscaloosa. And I was just going through a battle because I was blocking myself off from my family, my friends. And I was just like, I had the mentality, I got to do this on my own. It's all me. I got no one else. I can't rely on anyone else. And so I started going into, how do I make this work? How do I become self-aware? And one of the things I stumbled upon was mindfulness meditation. And I became mindful about, what's happening. If you can sit and focus on what's happening everywhere, then you won't delineate your focus. Like, there's cars going down the street, you're not really worrying about what's happening. You're just focused on there, even though that's happening. It's happening, but you're still focused. I mean, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to rant. It's just self-awareness, man, being mindful of what's happening. And I don't know how to phrase it any other way. I used to think I was so broken and, I was alone and, I can't sit still. I'm so all this bullshit. I used to be called, my family used to call me Fidge a little bit. And I used to spill things a lot and that shit killed me. And you know what? I never embodied it. If I don't embody it, it won't be. It's either one, you accept that you're this way. One, I'm a high energy person. Yes. I'm a fidgeter. No, I'm not a fidgeter. So 2, I change it. If you don't like it, change it. If you like it, keep it. That's all it is. Self-awareness.
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say.
That's awesome.
That's a good point.
A couple of things there. First off, dude, this is a very underrated problem in our country and maybe in our society right now is the diagnosis of attention disorders.
Yes, sir.
I think it's robbing kids of being kids. I think it's robbing boys. It seems like boys are more often prescribed with ADHD. I think it robs boys of being boys and being able to grow into becoming men one day.
Couldn't agree more.
You talk about that the drugs that you're taking and robbing you of yourself and making you like a robot.
Yep.
Dude, I mean, I can't imagine. So yeah, that's definitely something that we should talk about in the future.
Yeah, that is a good segment.
Yeah, dude. Another thing going on mindfulness, and you kind of talked to. Yeah, dude. Another thing you talked about with mindfulness and like trying to become self-aware. One thing that really resonated with me is this like old wiseism. I don't even know who said it. I tried looking it up. I can't find it. To know yourself is to forget yourself. And I think that's kind of one thing that you kind of talked about. You kind of touched on a little bit with mindfulness, but like that's one thing that I've definitely noticed on my self-awareness journey is whenever I'm not thinking about myself, whenever I'm not just so hyper-focused on just me, I'm able to truly realize who I am by focusing on things around me, focusing on people in my life, and focusing on, the betterment of the things around me, opposed to just like, getting in my own head and thinking about myself. So.
And overthinking is a really bad problem when it comes to that. But if you can sit there and this is actually a really good quote that I like to say, this ties into this. It's whenever you're in a conversation, think about it like this. Most of the people you encounter, a lot of people, they're not listening to what you're saying. Are you really in tune to the moment? But the quote is, most people aren't really listening to what you're saying. They're waiting for their turn to speak. Everybody has something to say. And if you can sit there and, be mindful and be like, okay, I'm listening. Okay, now I respond. Mindfulness, man.
Yeah. Right on. Guys, are your hearts and minds clear?
Yeah, it's been great.
I'm smiling and satisfied.
Yeah, I got yelled at last
Fuck
week
you,
for not
Blake.
saying that. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll close out.
I do have one more.
Go
thing.
ahead. Reed.
I will say, because on mental toughness, and this is just a quick little thing, because I did run a half marathon the other day, and a month ago I hadn't run more than 3 miles, and this goes back to the suffering about mental toughness, and I thought about it. Every mile it was just a new battle, and it ties into your life. Every day there's a new battle. How do you approach it though? Does it suck? Are you ready to approach the day? Are you grateful for the life you have? Do you go? I don't know, man. It's just, do you wake up every day and are positive and ready to get the day? Or are you like, life is dreadful and I hate my life? Every day is a battle. How do you approach it? That's
I'm gonna shed some skin today,
shed some skin today and get some better things tomorrow. But yeah, I don't mean to rant. I feel like I was ranting.
No, that's
stages
that's
Cheers,
all.
close it out.
Yeah, that's all really good insight. And I think the word in that statement, every mile, I think you could put that as a blank and make that interchangeable. Whatever it is that you're going through is a
I
new
love
battle.
that. Yeah. I love that, Garrett. Love that.
So I just made a note of that. I actually have a full page of notes here just from things that you guys have all said. Y'all have made me wiser today. I'm smarter because of y'all, and I appreciate that. So we'll close out, guys. This is Bonafide Talk. We've got Brian, Blake, and Cameron here.
Yes, sir.
We have Reed. We thank him for our time. You'll hear from him again in the future.
Reed.
He'll be back on a future episode. Cheers. See you next time.
Thank y'all so much for the opportunity. Love y'all.
Peace. Love you.
Love you, Reed.